Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim and Chris. On today's Tour Catch-Up, sponsored by DownloadTennis.com.
Shelton sizzles to Tokyo title.
Monfils magic in Stockholm.
And Boris Becker joins Holger Rune's coaching team.
Kim, Chris, today is the 23rd of October and we are here to catch up on the week in tennis at Tennis Weekly HQ. Ben Shelton is your champion in Tokyo. Gael Monfils back in the winner's circle in Stockholm. And we've had Boris Becker join Holger Rune's coaching team. Lots and lots to discuss. Lots of tournaments. I don't actually know how we're going to fit it into the hour, guys. But we've got to start with the fact that, Chris, I can see you are grinning because last week Kim came for you. She was not sure there was a tournament in Antwerp. And the Tennis Weekly community leapt to your defences.
I have never been more happy when I saw the notification on Twitter from 9 Vickman, who told me that in 1996 to 98, there was an ATP Antwerp title in February at the start of the year.
Well, of course.
Of course. I mean, that was definitely what I was referring to. I was actually thinking more of the Diamond Games, which was the women's event, which Amelie Mauresmo did so well
wow.
at. Which is a shame that that was a fantastic trophy for anyone who...
Sorry, what was the Diamond Games? That is even beyond my realms of tennis knowledge.
It was genuinely just a tournament. They made it seem like it was something quite extravagant with that title, but it was just a regular tournament, and the prize, the trophy, was almost this like wonderful glass sort of giant rectangle which had a player in. It was a lovely sculpture, so I hope they got to have a miniature version of that. But I mean, that's all well and good, Joel, but the biggest news of the week, you've got a goatee.
I know.
Very different.
Well, I know. Well, you know... Movember is coming up and, you know, I wanted to try something a little bit different. I have already got mocked at work for what they would consider some suspect facial hair, but I just wanted to go for something different.
A little bit Medvedevish, you know, when you grew it out for a bit. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, that's the justification. I'm channeling my inner octopus, my inner Daniel Medvedev.
I don't think you should deny our listeners an image of it, though. I think you should post on our socials after we've finished.
I'll post in Tennis Weekly merch so that, you know, at least there's something visually pleasing to see alongside my goatee.
We'll do a vote. Shave it off or keep it.
Oh, okay. Yes. Oh, I'm scared now. I'm scared. What are people going to say? Probably get rid of it. I'm not going to lie.
That's what I'll be voting for.
Well, if it's for a good cause, you know, you could raise some money in November. But yeah, I mean, apart from Joel's facial hair, guys, what's been your highlight from the past week? I'm sure there's more than just Joel's face. Joel, you've been watching The Masked Singer, I think.
Well, I was going to say, some people probably might want me in a costume like the celebrities on The Masked Singer. But I don't know if you guys spotted it this week or our listeners did, but... do you know who was on The Masked Singer in the United States of America?
Ooh, What about Chris
Evert? Their outfit or their costume was the Royal Hen, and they were singing to Philadelphia Freedom by Elton John.
Well, that's got to be a clue.
Got to be a big clue. I think it's a certain lady in a pink, normally in a pink blazer that you like so much.
I was actually shocked. She wasn't in a pink or magenta jacket. It was Billie Jean King. Billie Jean King, yes, was on The Masked Singer and was performing. I want to say Masked Singer. Was it The Masked Dancer? I'm not sure, but
it was definitely The Masked Singer because she was singing. I can confirm.
Okay.
She can hold a tune though, Joel. I'd say, and you know she's pushing 80, and she's really. She doesn't turn down a gig, so fair play to her.
What do you make of the Royal Hen? Have you seen an image of the Royal Hen? Is it going to give you nightmares tonight?
It looks a bit like I don't know, like a sailor or some kind of
Napoleonic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very like a naval captain or some kind of military leader.
Is, you know, the Royal Hen.
Yeah,
maybe it's. But I mean, fantastic effort, and you know who will appear next from tennis? Who'd we like to be on it?
Well, maybe Nick Kyrgios could appear because he is now unranked. He has no ATP points. He's got lots of free time to appear on a
No, he
reality
doesn't. He's
TV
too busy
show.
playing Xbox.
Well, he's only played one tennis match this year, and which actually surprised me. I thought he'd just played a bit more than that. But here's a question for you and our listeners. Can anyone tell me which match Nick Kyrgios played this year, and where was it?
It's got to be on the
tough.
grass. On the grass
On the
somewhere.
grass?
Yeah,
That's
it's
all I know.
Yeah.
Early on
Any
in the
guesses?
season, because I've got no idea.
Was it somewhere in Europe on grass?
Yes, that has narrowed it down somewhat. It was actually Stuttgart.
Okay.
I don't think you're going to get who he played, but listeners at home, you may know this immediately. It's Yibing Wu. He lost in straight sets. And yeah, that's the only time we've seen Nick Kyrgios on court this year. So, I mean, do you think he's unranked at the moment, but do you think we're going to see him back soon? Where do you think he can, get back to in the rankings? It's been a long time since he's been active.
To me, the interesting question is, are tournament organisers going to give him wildcards? I feel like he's box office. He gets, whether you like it or not, he gets bums on seats. And the idea of an unranked Nick Kyrgios, that arguably could say is like the most dangerous type of Nick Kyrgios in terms of, for those big seeds, it's a play you definitely do not want to face in round one of a tournament.
I mean, the Australian Open seems like the logical return for him, and maybe he decided to get as physically fit as he could and have some time off and give it a really good go next year. I can see the logic in that, and I mean, we all know that he's one of the most gifted players on the tour. It's just whether he's able to be fit enough and have the discipline required, because it is tricky. And if you're happy off the court, then we've seen with Muguruza and we've seen with the likes of Raducanu and a few others that it is very tempting to spend a little bit more time off the court. So there's no doubt he's got the talent, but has he got the commitment to tennis is my question there.
He doesn't need the commitment with all the wild cards that I reckon he's going to get.
You think he'll just get the appearance fees?
Well, more on appearance fees later. But Chris, what was your highlight of the last week?
Well, I mean, I've gone for social media. It's been a while since I've said my highlight is a social media post, but Serena Williams has stepped out after the birth of her second child for her first night out. And she went out with none other than Caroline Wozniacki, Denmark's finest, as well as Aryna Sabalenka. They were all at a party together, but this has set Twitter and Instagram alight because she actually cropped out Sabalenka from every single picture.
Savage.
I know, the reigning world number one. And Sabalenka did upload the full image to her Instagram stories. It did not make an in-feed. So I think there's a couple of question marks there as to everything is okay between the two of them. But Serena's looking like she's in pretty good shape. And I mean, I always say this, but I'd always love seeing her play. I think she probably has stepped away now. But and if you're Sabalenka, would you be a little bit annoyed that you got cropped out of this one?
I feel like if you're Sabalenka, you missed a trick there in terms of uploading the same photo on your Instagram, but have Serena Williams cropped out.
That would be genuinely very funny. And she does love to play around like that. So maybe that would be a great idea. But I know either way, Caroline Wozniacki's make it into that picture.
Yeah, I mean, unless Serena just, is the dimensions of her Instagram. However, yeah, I think maybe not. But bit of grudge match going on there, maybe. Sabalenka feeling spurned. I mean, let's move on to the tennis court because we have had a lot of tournaments to catch up on that have taken place over the last week. Let's start in Tokyo, shall we? Because that was a men's 500 event, and we saw Ben Shelton winning the title to win his very first ATP Tour title. He beat Aslan Karatsev in straight sets in the final to get that title 7-5, 6-1. With this title, he's going to break into the top 15. He's only 21 years of age. We know he's got a lot of promise and potential. He can finally tick that tour title box on his kind of career CV. Joel, what did you make of Ben Shelton this week in Tokyo?
Yeah, I think he played, to be honest, I think he played his best match in the final. Earlier on, I think he was struggling to find his rhythm a little bit. In his first two matches, he dropped the first set and was able to come through. But in that final, he just sort of, I think, pulled away from Aslan Karatsev in the end, particularly in that second set. And his big booming serve, helped him along the way. All I would say is the only thing I was disappointed by we didn't get the telephone celebration at the end, where I was like fully expecting, that to come out. But it was a good result for him. But yeah, I was a little bit disappointed by the lack of celebration at the end.
Maybe he wasn't dialed in this time. Maybe it was a wrong number. Could be, or maybe they didn't connect. The
international
never
connect call fee. It's in Tokyo. It might be very expensive.
Maybe his network provider doesn't allow him for that sort of roaming ability.
Yeah, and I mean, he had to come down from a set down to win his first 2 matches of the week against Taro Daniel and Jordan Thompson. He also came down from a set and 2 breaks in the semi-final against Marcos Giron. So really having to kind of prevail a lot in these long matches. And like you said, Joel, really playing his kind of best match and saving it for the final. Once he'd got through, he actually looked pretty fresh, didn't he? And it was a bit of a runaway victory in the end. Chris, what did you make of Ben's performance in the final itself? Particularly maybe his forehand wing. Yeah,
I mean, he was playing really well all week, and I think what's really impressive is that even in those sets, as you said, where it wasn't necessarily working, he wasn't necessarily landing all the forehands he'd want to, he stuck in it and he made it really difficult and made them have to kind of beat him, his opponents. And in the final, I mean, if you're playing as well as he did, he hit 18 winners, 12 off his forehand and 12 unforced errors in total. It just shows that you're just playing the game you want to play. Those are the numbers that you want to be hitting, and this is a really big learning curve for him. Getting that first title and getting such a big first title. I know it's not like a Grand Slam, but a 500 is a pretty big step, and not everyone can win a 500. And there's been an awful lot on social media about it. But I mean, players who haven't won a 500 include Casper Ruud and Stefanos Tsitsipas, I believe, who is still not, out of all of the finals he's had, I think he's had 7 finals, he hasn't managed to do it. So getting over the 500 hurdle, I mean, that's got to set you in a good path now.
I know it's impressive, the rise of Ben Shelton this season, and it feels like even top 10 at the moment is not a far stretch of the imagination. I've got to ask though, like, where do you stand on Ben Shelton? Is he confident? Is he arrogant? Because I do sense like there's a part of the tennis fan community that just sort of, whatever he does sort of rubs them up the wrong way.
I mean, he's got confidence, but I think you need that if you're going to perform at an elite level and, impose yourself in this world that we inhabit. Does it step across the line into sort of arrogance? I guess I can see why people might perceive it that way, but, I find him enjoyable to watch, and I don't put him in the same category as a Nick Kyrgios who just outright misbehaves. So for me, it's, I guess, an acceptable amount of occasional ego on show.
You've got to have an ego, haven't you, really? You've got to be a bit of a showman, and I think it is more in that sort of line of things. And I mean, he's generating a lot of column inches in terms of his celebrations. We're talking about what he's writing on the camera. He obviously had a breakthrough season this year, and he's making headlines on and off the court. And I think it's kind of testament to the fact that he has been getting the results on the court, which kind of gives you a bit more license to, off the court, make a bit more of a splash. So, I mean, I like him, and I think, in US tennis, it's nice to have someone who's getting the results and also has that sort of like American sort of attitude with him that, he can do anything.
I didn't realise that his father used to play. Have I just had my head in the sand for a while?
I had no idea either until this week.
I had no idea. But his father won a title in the Open era. So they have become the 4th father and son duo to both win tour level titles, along with the Dent, so Phil and Taylor Dent, the Corders, Petra and Sebastian, and also the Krishnans, Ramanathan and Ramesh, who I'm not actually too familiar with. I do apologise. But yeah, I had no idea that Ben Shelton's dad was a tour pro, title-winning tour pro.
I had no idea either, to be honest, but I thought you were going to say Casper Ruud's father. I thought Christian Ruud, because I know he played.
Oh, surely.
He'd been a tennis player, but just turns out not that great, is what I just found out.
He didn't win a title. Oh, dear. Yeah, I thought they would have been on there as well. And just before we look at other events, I noticed Japanese wildcard got to the semi-finals in Tokyo. Shintaro Mochizuki got a win over Taylor Fritz after being bageled in the first set. Joel, you're nodding your head. What did you make of this kind of out of the blue Japanese wildcard making it to the semis.
Yeah, it was an incredible run. I think he's 20 years old. I think he is a Wimbledon junior singles champion. And, he was in the same draw I think Carlos Alcaraz was in. So it just shows, I think he did have some junior pedigree, but I think the challenge he's had is that it's been hard to transition from the juniors to the big leagues, to the senior tour. And again, all credit, I guess, to Ben Shelton in terms of how he's naturally transitioned and just felt so comfortable, playing at this level, because it doesn't come easy to everyone. So I think it was really nice actually for Mochizuki to have his moment, have a fairy tale run all the way through to the semi-finals, because I don't think it's come easy, that transition. I think it took him, I think he had like 9 defeats on the ATP tour, at the ATP tour level before he got his first victory. So yeah, really, really happy for him, and we'll see how it goes. I feel like he's, I look at him on court and I'm like, he's not the most imposing player, and I can see why, at this level, at the very top level, he can maybe get, he's not got as far up as maybe he would have liked, but perhaps this might give him the confidence that actually he can do it, and actually he can make a living on the ATP tour.
You must be someone who has real resilience about you if you've lost the first set 6-love and you come back to take out the top seed. It really is, because surely you think that's the door being closed. But for Taylor Fritz and a lot of the ATP finals contenders, I mean, what was going on this week? I mean, I think the only player who made it to a quarter...
No one wants that final spot in the tour finals, I swear.
Lost first round, yeah.
I know, and all of these players who were having some form have been going out. I mean, De Minaur made the quarters but didn't go further. And we'll see a similar pattern in some of the other tournaments. Obviously, Casper Ruud went out early as well. And then it's just a case where if you're Taylor Fritz this season, should he qualify based on how he's been playing? And Casper, it feels like we are screaming out for a breakthrough, an Annette Kontaveit style qualification. Just win all the last tournaments, do a Felix Auger-Aliassime, and then qualify for us. But
it's Manarino's to lose, is what you're saying, right?
That's exactly what I'm saying. It really is.
French number one. Well, talking of French players, we have had a French victory last week on the tour in Stockholm with Gael Monfils winning his 12th tour title. I actually thought he might have had slightly more than that. I thought 12 doesn't sound enough for Monfils, but it's his first title in almost 2 years. He beat Pavel Kotov, a qualifier, in the final to get his long-awaited 12th title. It's been a while since he won one. Adelaide, which was in January 2022, was the last time he was the winner at an event, and aged 37, the oldest finalist as well in the tournament's history. Chris, you were going to go to Stockholm, but you deviated from those plans, so you would have been there to see Monfils lift the title, but I'm assuming you tuned in. What did you make of Monfils this week, in particular his final performance?
Well, we saw kind of a little bit of this form earlier in the summer, and it's just great that he's able to be back out there playing really well. I mean, you don't always think of him as being the greatest indoor player of all time, but some of the highlights, he was really lighting up Stockholm, and I think the tournament really needed it. He probably was one of the biggest names there. I think him and Wawrinka are some of the big crowd draws that were playing, and he certainly put on a show this week, and it's very, very impressive. And some of the numbers that have come out after this, I think you do forget, that he is 37, because he does just play with such a youthful athleticism. And I had to double check this again, well, triple check this. He's reached at least one ATP Tour singles final every year since 2005. That's 19 consecutive seasons. So that really is an impressive feat. Well, that is impressive. Only 4 people have done it, and I can't tell you who they are, so I shouldn't have brought up the fact there were 4 people, but...
Well, I believe Roger Federer is one of them, and to me, what's incredible about that statistic is that I think Monfils, there's a part of me that kind of looks and thinks about him. It's like... a what if, like, unfulfilled given the injuries that he's had. So it's remarkable to me that he's managed to get to one final every season for so long because of the injury setbacks that he's had, and the fact that he's had to continually fight from dropping down the rankings. And similarly this season, over the last 12 months or so, he had that foot injury. I think he was out for 6-7 months, low down the rankings, and to get himself back up into the top 100, and he's got very little points to defend now, I think, until next summer. It's a real opportunity for him to just drive and continue going up the rankings further and further.
A 38-year-old French number one. Is that what he's aiming for next year?
Oh, okay. He's coming from Manarino, isn't he?
It's coming from Manarino's
title.
He
already defeated him in the quarterfinals.
He did. So that could have been the battle for the French number one going forwards. It may come down to that. Chris, Holger Rune lost in the first round. So yet another instance of, I guess, a higher ranked player just not having a great week on tour. And what do we know about Pavel Kotov? Getting to the final as a qualifier. I have to say I feel a bit ignorant because I don't really know anything about him. But perhaps you can inform me and our listeners who also may be none the wiser.
Well, he has been a player who is playing a lot better than he has done previously. He does throw an upset here and there. He's achieved kind of a career high ranking at around 85. So he's not someone who you would necessarily think would have put in this performance. But he has now reached the career high ranking of 81 this week. So this has been a season where he has been getting some results for the first time. Obviously making kind of his first final here, and then he's had a couple of other interesting results here where he made his debut at the Australian Open. So he's there or thereabouts. He's having some decent results, but it feels like he's a player who's about to do something a little bit more than that, especially when you come through qualifying. Those are sorts of players who always end up doing something really good in the next few weeks, and we think, how do we not know this player?
Well, certainly another newish name to kind of keep our eye on, and perhaps if he's in good form, he will go on to do more in the few weeks following. Just going back to Holger Rune, some news out of his camp that he's actually hired Boris Becker as his coach, which is, some may say, quite controversial given that Boris Becker did a stint in prison earlier. I think it was this year, if not last year, for tax evasion, I think it was. Chris and Joel, what do you both make of this? I know, Chris, you're quite ensconced in Holger Rune's career, as you're based in Denmark.
That's why I moved to Denmark, Kim.
It's why you moved to Denmark, just to follow his career.
Yes, it is. To be closer to the man, the legend, Holger Rune. Well, I'll tell you what. I saw this and I have to say my heart did sink a little bit because I'm just not sure that this is going to be, from a temperament perspective, the perfect match. I thought maybe after the Patrick Mouratoglou, he'd be looking to actually make the genuine reconnection with his kind of childhood coach. I really thought that's what we asked him the question. That's what he said. It didn't seem like he was searching for someone else. Like he was getting back to what it was that made him the great player that was allowed him to rise up the ranking. So I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting Boris Becker to be coaching such a high-profile player so soon after his release, because he hasn't been embraced with open arms to the broadcasting world necessarily yet. So it's a big risk.
He's still banned from... Boris Becker's still banned from Wimbledon, so...
Yeah, he will not be able to attend with Holger next year. That is, completely factually true. So it's an odd decision in that sense. So for me personally, I think there probably were better people for the pick. He has got a track record, obviously, with Novak Djokovic. He was around for some really big successes for him. But for me personally, I don't think that this feels like the best decision.
Do you know what? The only thing I would add to that is that I think there were a lot of eyebrows raised when, Coco Gauff started working with, someone like Brad Gilbert, who was seen as a little bit of a, just a commentator on social media, and maybe was a little bit almost underappreciated. And Gauff took Gilbert on, and that worked absolute wonders. And I raised my eyebrow in a similar vein, with Becker coming into the Rune camp. But because that happened there, I'm almost kind of a little bit like, well, why couldn't it happen on the on the men's side? And is this the redemption arc of Boris Becker after all of the the troubles he's gone through over the last year? But I think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be interesting. And we'll see how it goes, because with these coaching things, you never know how long they go on for. Is it a trial basis? Is it weeks in, weeks out? I think it's going to be interesting, and it might even depend on actually how Boris Becker is, I guess, accepted back into the ATP Tour if he is traveling with Holger Rune, because not everyone is going to be his biggest fan given what's happened over the last 12 months.
Yeah, I think, he's obviously got a lot of experience and has added a lot to his coaching repertoire in the past. But I guess for me, it's like the reputation of Boris Becker has been, marred by all the kind of tax stuff. So
is he like forbidden fruit? Is he like forbidden fruit now type situation?
For me, he's just got a bit of an unsavoury tang.
He's damaged goods.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. But if you're trying to boost your career, maybe you don't care about that. You want his tennis knowledge, don't you? Not his money tax.
And he's always been known for off the court antics. Not to go into too many details there from a lifestyle perspective.
But you would say on a tennis court, he did the business as a teenager. And maybe he can pass that knowledge and wisdom on to Holger Rune, because that is something that is not done that often to the levels that he did. And potentially that is what Rune is missing from his camp at the moment.
Integrity, though, I do think is very important when it comes to this, and I think that he's someone who you would have to question, that you wouldn't get involved in something that could also lead to a situation that isn't favourable for you. So that would be, people do say you are the company that you keep at times. So I think it's not going to help him for people who aren't a fan of Holger. I'm still a fan, but I think people will be asking more and more questions with that one.
Yeah, and let's have a look at the other events that took place on the men's tour this week just gone. We were in Antwerp,
in
longer February.
In the 90s?
I didn't realise it had moved.
No, it's the 16th to the 22nd of October nowadays. But we had Alexander Bublik winning his third career title. He beat Arthur Fee 6-4, 6-4 on Sunday, just yesterday in Antwerp. Straight sets win. He saved all the break points he faced, and kind of just edged Fee, because it was a bit up and down, but he managed to come through, and he was not in a great run of form kind of coming into this event. So I'm sure Bublik will be delighted to have clinched the title.
He blows hot and cold, doesn't he? He can just turn it on at any moment. And I was looking at some of his serving stats in the final and across this tournament. It was mightily impressive, and at times I think in the final he was just serving two first serves as a first and a second serve, and Fils didn't really have much to answer to it. And I think it just shows that with Bublik, when he does concentrate on his game, when he does stay focused mentally, he is a force to be reckoned with, and he can win titles with that mentality. And I think we have this conversation, and that's one conversation we have. And the second conversation we have is Bublik getting crazy at an umpire, or doing something like throwing his racket
using the
at the
handle
back of the court.
to get
using the handle
ball back
exactly
over and holding the strings.
It's very like split personalities going on, isn't there?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's he does have these sort of moments, and he's had a couple of them this year, where he just, as you say, puts it together, and he's able to do shots that no one can. It's shots from almost like his brain has thought about that shot and the composition of that shot in a very different way, which I think for someone like Fils is like his worst nightmare, as someone who can really upset his rhythm, because
definitely.
if you do give him, a pretty consistent ball, he will be able to tee off on it. And I think, Joel, you asked me the question about Fils in terms of him versus Jack Draper in terms of the talent level. It's hard to believe that he was outside the top 200 at the start of the year for Fils, and now he's like pushing top 30. and he's putting together some really consistent results. So I'm still backing Fils as the
are you?
the player.
I still think Draper's ceiling personally is higher, but I will say Fils at right now, his body, like, he is ready for this. I mean, we saw that in person in Manchester. He's got a great, physique that I think is up to the rigors of tennis, even for him at such a young age. That I think there are other players
Doesn't
around
look
him.
19, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Other players around him, Jack Draker. I'd also put Holger Rune in that category. Like, they're just not as physically up to the task, I think, at times. And we've seen that this season.
Or get better at resting. I feel like Fils, I always see things on his Instagram of him enjoying like time by the pool or with friends. And one thing from this tournament I was going to mention kind of before we move on, the Tsitsipas's have won a doubles title together.
Petros is in the top 100 in doubles now, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Does this
Just
mean
shows you
are they still having to get
wildcards can get
wild
you
cards?
far.
Are they still having to rely on wild cards?
They might not for every tournament.
I mean, that's a step in the right direction.
But I hope that he is coming back to captain the Greek United Cup team again, because I think that was a real success last time.
Let's look at what happened on the WTA tour last week, because we have had a trio of tournaments, just like on the men's side. We went to Monastir in Tunisia, where we had Elise Mertens winning that title.
It's the Elise Mertens Open, Kim, because I don't think she's played there twice and she's won. She's won it back to back.
Yeah, she's never lost there. She's got a 10-0 record at the event. But she thrashed Jasmine Paolini 6-3, 6-love. She also, I think, has a very good record over Paolini, which probably helped in the final. It's her 8th WTA title. And yeah, she obviously loves the courts out there. It's her first successful defence of a title, I think, in about 5 years, when she did it in Hobart. So I know, Joel, you're a bit of a fan of Elise Mertens. You think she's quite a stalwart player of the tour. Were you impressed with her performances in Monastir this week?
To be honest, it felt like the tournament was a bit of a formality to her. She didn't drop a set. She threw in a couple of bagels, breadstick as well, some really comfortable set score lines. So yeah, nice for her to get back in to the singles winning circle. I still think she's in this sort of, she's proven her prowess on the doubles court. She's reached number one there. I still feel like there's more to give from her on the singles court. And I've unfairly maybe spoken to her about before in terms of her Grand Slam record and just reaching kind of third rounds and fourth rounds. And I do think, there's more in the tank there. And I think she can go further with the capabilities that she's got with her tennis racket.
Yeah, and Paolini, she was in her 4th final. She has only won one of those in the past, but not to be in the final for her. But yeah, great week for Elise Mertens. She'll be looking to she'll be hoping they run that tournament next year, so she can make it 15-0. But let's look at what else we had on the WTA tour. We had the Transylvania Open. Joel, I know you were very much looking forward to see if Christian bought out the Cape
and she
again.
did, and she delivered.
She delivered.
Is it the same
Not so
Cape?
much.
Ooh, I don't know. No, I think there was an evolution. I think there's been an evolution.
It looked a bit
Evolution of the
blingier
Cape.
that I remember. I think it's become more of a moment, yeah. So she's definitely looking the part, Kim.
Looking the part, but the tennis wasn't quite making the waves like the Cape was. She lost in the second round to Ava Lees. But however, Tamara Korpach of Germany won her first tour title in Transylvania, beating Elena Gabriela Rusa, Romanian player, in the final in straight sets. So another player who's ticked off first tour title this week on her career CV. So she needed just under 2 hours to get the win over Roos. And I mean, she's a player that I've not watched an awful lot of, but just kind of there and thereabouts. A bit of a journey woman on the tour, I think, really. So it's nice for her that she's sort of finally got that ticked off. She beat Britain's Jodie Burrage en route as well to that win. And then very much last but not least, we had a tournament out in Nanchang in China, which Katerina Siniakova won. This was a bit more of a difficult final. She was
epic.
up against Marie Buzkova, 3.5 hours. Siniakova saving 3 match points, lost the first set 6-1, and then won the second and third set in a tie break. Joel, comments on this match. How did Siniakova get over the finish line there?
Tough loss for Bushkova. Siniakova's she's such a grafter, isn't she? And she had that final last week against Leylah Fernandez, which she didn't come out as the victor, and it went similarly deep. She's just battled, and I don't think this was the prettiest final. I don't think it's going to get any prizes for that, but certainly in terms of fighting spirit, Siniakova had it full on display, and it was incredible to see her kind of clutch through in the end. But yeah, Bushkova will be very, very disappointed because there were tears there at the end, and as you say, 3 match points. Arguably, probably she should have got the job done.
Yeah, very, very close indeed. And perhaps without wanting to dwell too much on the 3 events that we had this week, I think for me the standout match was that final in Nanchang. But I think actually the most interesting thing that arguably to come out of the WTA side of things this week is actually some kind of quite controversial comments that have come out from the Kazakhstan Tennis Federation VP, Yuri Polsky. They have stated that the WTA could well go bankrupt by 2026. That's only 3 years away. They have said that the WTA are in a very bad place, and if their financial situation does not change, they could go bankrupt. And that is the reason why they are having to really focus on increasing the value of the bigger tournaments and kind of not prioritising the 250s. Chris, what on earth do you make of these comments? Can we trust them, first of all? And what do you make of these comments from the Kazakhstani Tennis Federation?
Well, to be honest, I think he's been right about things before. He did kind of break the story about the 250s and the new rules that were coming in there. So I feel like he's a bit of a WTA whistleblower at this point. But there has been a response
Get him
from
on the
WTA.
pod.
Maybe we should, actually. That's a great idea. I hope his DMs are open. But in terms of the response from the WTA, the chairman, Steve Simon, has declared the WTA is in a healthy financial position. He's excited about the strong future. He highlighted there's been an increase of 400 million in compensation to players over the next 10 years. And so this is something that I think it is interesting because we were thinking whether there would be, this merger. And in terms of what has been kind of the response from the WTA is that is very much not on the cards. And they've been talking about what goals they're looking to kind of work towards, which is to try and have equal prize money at combined WTA 1,500 events by 2027 and single week events for WTA 1,500 by 2033. So it's a case where they're still trying to work towards equal prize money. So knowing they're in a less financially stable position than the ATP is no surprise. I think there has been for a while the perception that potentially it's not being run as the most profitable or financially competent business, given some of the decisions, especially around things like the WTA finals and the amount of money that may have been lost in things like Fort Worth, where there just weren't the ticket sales. So the numbers on the books do not show them making significant profits and actually making a loss for years when the ATP was making a pretty hefty amount. So I don't think there's a case that the WTA is plain sailing and the numbers are brilliant. I think there is a problem, and I think responding this quickly to something that you could just say was unfounded does show that maybe the WTA is doing a bit of damage reputation and is a bit concerned that people might start to talk a lot more about how they're doing. But yeah, I mean, none of it felt like it was a surprise or untrue when you heard it.
Joel, anything to add to Chris's comments there?
Yeah, I think it feels like, the whole, merger and the ATP and WTA working together. The more I was reading these comments, the more I feel like it's out of necessity, more than anything, because both tours, need to thrive for tennis to thrive. And it's just sad, I think, and disappointing that I think arguably at the moment, and I think further into the future, I would arguably say the WTA at the top end, their product is stronger and has greater quality and has greater depth. And at times, their matches are more entertaining. And it's a shame that I think, financially, the organisation is just not up to scratch, I think, with the product in terms of how to sell it. And they're almost kind of have to get into a situation where they're now dependent and reliant on the ATP to survive. But I do think it is a case that they are stronger together, and I expect to see that to happen, sooner rather than later, because if it doesn't happen, we don't want to get into a situation where we don't have a tour and we don't have these players to showcase. And it's funny how in other sports, I think these opportunities, we've seen big investment come in from foreign places like Saudi Arabia or wherever, and we've seen that in football particularly recently. But it does almost leaves the WTA vulnerable, I feel, to a big money shake-up that could come in and challenge and really upset the apple cart in terms of the tennis landscape.
Well, think about it. You wouldn't be looking at those sorts of partners if you weren't in a situation where it was money that you couldn't refuse, because naturally that would be something you'd want to turn down as the WTA because of certain issues and reasons behind it. But the final thing I'll say before we kind of move on from this is that if your goal is equal prize money at the events, why would you not work with them? I mean, if you take something like Rome, for example, the runner-up in Rome in 2022 received more money than the winner did for the women's, and the prize pot was just, worlds apart. It was over double for the men. So it's definitely a case that it doesn't really show significant progress unless you work with the ATP to achieve those goals, I believe, or work more closely. And shutting the door like this isn't necessarily a positive thing.
Yeah, well, on that note, let's take a very quick break, but do join us in the second half, where we'll be discussing Emma Raducanu's recent coach comments, the United Cup draw for 2024, and we'll also be looking ahead to this week's events, including Vienna, Basel, and the Zhuhai Elite Trophy. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, sponsored by downloadtennis.com. Now we're going to move on to a bit of par for the courts, back and forth this time with Joel, who is, I think, pitting me and Chris against each other.
Oh, it's been a while, hasn't it?
It has been a while, hasn't it?
I look forward to losing as usual against you, Chris.
well, this
don't say that.
This edition of Par for the Courts back and forth is a very timely one, and it's to do with our very favourite, I want to say B event, but we just love it anyway. The Zhuhai Elite Trophy. It is back.
Oh wow.
And you may guess, and listeners as well may guess where this is going, but the last Zhuhai Elite Trophy took place in 2019. And I had a look at who played in that event. And I would like you to tell me as many of those players who played in the 2019 Zhuhai Elite Trophy. Now, I know that is pretty tough going, so I am going to give you the nationalities that were represented from the 12 participants. So, listeners, you may want to get a pen and a piece of paper to write these down, but I'm going to say these now. Kim and Chris as well. These are the nationalities that were involved.
2019, okay.
Yeah.
Right,
so I'm looking for
3 years before I joined the podcast, Joel.
I know.
Just to make that really clear. Defending myself.
It's so long ago. I know. So I'm looking for. There are 3 Americans.
Wait, we should be writing this down, shouldn't we, Kim?
Yes, I'm jotting it down now.
Yeah, I've got notes app out.
Right. There are 3 Americans. There are 2 Croatians. There is a Belarusian. There is a player from the Netherlands, a Greek player, a Ukrainian player, a Czech player, and a Chinese player.
Ooh. Okay. Gosh, the one player I was going to say isn't in that list based on their nationality, so there we go.
Well, maybe start with them, Kim, just for me, please.
No, I'm not that silly. Okay, who's going first then between us?
I'm going to select this. I'm going to go. Chris can go first. Okay. And just to clarify, there are 11 qualifiers, and there was 1 wild card, which was the Chinese player.
I could have told you that, actually.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
Here we go. This is a bit cocky.
I remember it being real rogue.
I remember it just like it was yesterday.
Honestly, that was all I had in my life before the podcast was the WTA Elite Trophy. I think the only way to play this, Kim, is if there's one player from a country, we can't be nice to each other. We have to go for it. So,
Cutthroat.
It is cutthroat. I'm going to go for the Belarusian who won it, and that's Arina Sabalenka.
Correct. Yes, Arina Sabalenka is the Belarusian player.
I am going to go for the Dutch player, whom I think must be Kiki Bertens.
That is correct. And Kiki Bertens got to the final. She was the runner-up, but yes, that is a correct answer.
Trying to think. Who? Well, I guess
who is going to go for one of the three Americans? That's what I'm curious about.
I'm going to leave them till last, but I'm going to go for a Croatian, Petra Martic.
Correct. Very good.
Ooh.
Petra Martic is on the list. Went out in the round robin.
I'm going to go for another Croatian.
Oh, here we go. Ooh. This is big. This is big.
Well, I can't think of any others apart from Donna Vekic.
That is a correct answer. Yes, Donna Vekic is on the list. Also went out in the round robin stage. I'm nervous you're going to get all of them, but I'm hoping it's not going to come to that. But yes.
I honestly don't think that's too likely. I might try and show off a little bit here. And I think that year, 2019, the only other Ukrainian player who could have been there, because I believe Svitolina was probably at the WTA finals, I think it would have been Yastremska. So I'm going to say Yastremska.
Yastremska is correct, yes. Diana
Yastremska then or something.
Yeah, also went out in the round robin, but yeah, she was on the list.
So
no one's touched the Americans yet, and I'm like,
no, I'm going to go for the Greek player.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. Who I know there's Eleni Danilidou, who
Yeah,
I don't even know
there.
if she plays anymore. But I think it must be Maria Sakkari, because this would have been slightly before she got her ranking up. So I'm going to say Sakkari.
Sakkari is correct, yes.
Right. Did you say there was
We've got 3 US, 1 Czech and 1 Chinese to go.
And 1 Belgian player, sorry, I got that off the list as well.
1 Belgian.
Is that fly in the ointment? Sorry, apologies.
Belgium, 2019. I don't think it's going to be Wickmeyer. I'm going to go for the player who always probably ends up here, Madison Keys.
Correct, yes. Madison Keys is one of the 3 Americans on the list. Oh, this is getting tough. This is getting tight.
Go for the Belgium, Kim. Come on.
Well, now I know there's a Belgian. I'm reassessing. So, I mean, there was Kirsten Flipkens back in the day, and there was Janina Wickmeyer, but surely it must be Elise Mertens.
Correct, yes. Elise Mertens also on the list. Okay, it is neck and neck.
So
Tense.
we have a Chinese player
and 2 Americans
player.
and a Czech player.
I believe that the Chinese wildcard was the highest ranked Chinese player at the time, which was Zhang Saiso.
I thought that was going to be a deal breaker, but that is a correct answer. Yes, Zhang
I remember that
Saisai
wild card, and she had a good run, I think.
card.
I'm not sure if she made it to the semis, maybe, but she had a run.
Chris, that is very good knowledge. She got to the semi-finals, yes.
That is impressive. I would not have said her, so well done.
Is it impressive or is it sad, Kim? I think is the question.
I'm going to risk the Czech player here, because I remember seeing her at Wimbledon that year in 2019. And I'm sure this was kind of when she got to the quarters and I kind of, maybe she started making inroads. But there are a lot of Czech players. So actually, you know, how many of them would have also been higher ranked than this person?
It's tense.
Yeah, I'm going to say Karolina Mukova. But she might not have been right up there, just actually thinking about it.
I don't know.
Oh.
It's correct. Yes, Karolina Mukova
yes.
is on the list. Wow, we're coming down to the 2 Americans. Who would have thought it?
I'm really not sure.
I'm
about
really
this.
nervous now. Is this going to end in a draw?
I'm not sure I'm going to get either of these, if I'm really honest.
There are two Americans left. Maybe our American listeners are shouting out right now who the final
only name
two
I
are.
can think of, because I think she won the 2020 AO, and she was there. She wasn't obviously top 10 at the time, but she was. I think she was maybe seeded then, but she was playing some good tennis. I'm going to go for Sophia Kenin.
Correct. Sophia Kenin is on the list.
I almost
Wow.
said Sloane, but then I thought there's no way she'd be in Zhuhai
I
at
can't
that time
believe
of
you've
year.
got all of these. And Kim, this
That's
is to
amazing.
draw. This is to draw.
I know. I can't. There's no hope of me winning.
Wow.
So I was thinking about Sloane Stephens earlier. I was thinking
Oh,
Coco
yeah.
Gauff, but I don't think she would have been higher enough ranked then.
I need a name, Kim.
I'm going to
One
say
American.
Venus Williams.
One American.
Venus Williams.
Ooh, that's quite a good guess.
Because I think she might have been
She did well in Asia.
there.
So Venus
Like-
Williams to draw in one of the
Just-
most dramatic ever half of the courts. It's incorrect, Kim. It's
Oh,
not
no.
the right
Oh, Kim.
American.
Who was
Who-
it?
Chris
Oh, wait,
wins
should we have
It's
one more
not
guess?
JPEG.
Chris wins it. It's not Jessie Pegula.
Ooh, I have no idea.
What other Americans exist on the
Danielle
tour?
Collins?
It's not Danielle
Oh,
Collins.
yeah. Oh, Bethany Mattek Sands,
It's not
Coco
Bethany Mattek
Vandeweghe.
Sands. It's not Coco Vandeweghe. It is.
Melanie Udan. No, I'm joking.
It is.
Caroline Dolehide.
Dolhide.
It is Alison Risk.
Oh,
Alison
I would
Risk
never have said her.
on the list. Wow.
She was
what?
around top 20 at that time, I imagine, yeah.
So there
Oh,
you have it.
dear.
It was Kiki Bertens, Sophia Kenin, Madison Keys, Arina Sabalenka, Petra Martic, Elise Mertens, Alison Risk, Donna Vekic, Maria Sakkari, Diana Yastremska, Karolina Mukova, and Zheng Sai. There you go.
So, a few of them are back this time. Donna Vekic is back. Madison Keys is back. Sakkari, I believe, is also making an appearance. So, I mean, surprising consistency at the top of the game, considering how long ago that was.
Yeah, no, that was really good, Joel. Very dramatic. Went down to the wire.
Just
Congrats,
hard enough.
Chris, on your win.
Thanks. If I lost that, I would never hear the end of it.
No. Well, let's have a look at what's in our mailbag this week, because we had Tim reach out to us on email. Tim's been watching the David Beckham Netflix documentary, and he wants to know which tennis player we would like to see get the David Beckham style Netflix treatment for a documentary series about their life. I haven't started watching the Beckham thing yet, so I'm not too sure of the format and how it's going. But how about one word answer? Joel, Chris, tell me who you would love to see a documentary about coming to our screens.
Andre Agassi.
Okay, Chris?
I'm going to be naughty, and I'm going to try and cover as many bases as possible. I think the Tsitsipas's, that whole family would be a walking meme.
Keeping up with the Sissipasses. That's
I think
great.
it would be
I love that.
meme, relentless. I think he would, but make him think this is highbrow.
That feels more
spiritual.
entertainment as opposed to Netflix, but I'll give you it.
Badosa popping in, we love it. Kim, what about you?
Yeah, that does.
And you can't say
it's-
Rafael Nadal. I'm already like vetoing
my
that
backup
now. You
answer
can't say
would
that.
be the Monfises. I think that'd be quite nice.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want a household name, I should really pick a big, a household name. Serena. I think just a one-word title, Serena would definitely sell. Would definitely get the.
That has
What do
actually
you
already
want,
been
Kim?
a film.
What do you want, Kim?
Come on.
What do I want? I think it'd
What
be
would you
quite
log on
interesting
for?
just to follow a run-of-the-mill player. Maybe
John
someone
Millman.
like.
Harmony Tan.
Yeah, I was thinking Safarova or Caroline Garcia. The nice, friendly individuals.
Safarova's not coining a Netflix deal.
Yeah, but they're nice, friendly players. I think you have, like they would give
Garcia. I think Garcia would be.
nice
Yeah, I'll give you that.
perspective on one's career.
Last season, Garcia would be fascinating going to this season.
Yeah.
Okay.
Going from, through the Renaissance. I mean, you could call it the Renaissance as the documentary
honestly.
title, couldn't you?
Yeah.
And then people
Yeah.
would click on it
Netflix
thinking
would
it's
be all over
Beyonce.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The story arc would be amazing.
Well,
so there we go. That's my answer.
We hope Series 3 is going to be better than Series 2.
Yes. Thanks so much, Tim, for your question. That's entertained us greatly trying to think of that.
Kim, I can't.
I mean, people wouldn't even know how to say the name of the doc because it should really be Shavajeva.
Oh, say it, Joel. You love saying that one.
Shavajeva. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic scenes.
All right. Or maybe Emma Raducanu should actually be the subject of the documentary, seeing as, she is a global name now. And actually, talking of Emma Raducanu, she's in, she's been in the news a little bit, hasn't she? Because she's kind of come out in a talk with Radio 4 about her coaching situation, because she's aiming to return from this big surgery in time for next season. And obviously she's going to be coming back with a much lower ranking. But she was sort of asked about her coaches and how her relationship with them is always very short-lived. And she basically came out and said that she asks her coaches a lot of questions, and on certain occasions they haven't been able to keep up. So she's providing some justification for the kind of plethora of coaches that have had brief stints. But yeah, what did you make of those comments? What do you think she's going to be asking her coaches? I mean, what questions is she asking? What would you ask your coach?
Well, that's a fantastic question in the first place. I mean, we always say, like, do you ask the right questions? They didn't have the answer on the day, but it sounds like you get the wrong answer and she might fire you, the way that she sort of had a chuckle after she said it. But I'd be asking questions about the pattern of play on the WTA tour. I think that's something that'd be quite interesting. I think you'd want someone who had some really good insight on what was happening right now. She says she really wants people to challenge things in her thinking. So I think she doesn't want to know something that she already does know. She really wants different perspectives, and that's why she has always said that she was chopping and changing coaches, not just to get one overview and one trajectory. But the interview, I think overall, they were very kind to her with the questioning about this. They kind of nodded to some of the hiccups along the way, but they didn't really go in on the fact that she was really unable to keep a coach, and some of them did leave her rather than the other way around. So I think we do forget that. A question she might also be asking, do you have an in with Rolex? I'd love another deal. But she did kind of say that I think a lot of players, when they're younger, don't make enough deals and kind of sort out their future for after tennis. So I think that was interesting. But the final thing I'll say, she thinks she's going to be playing for another 15 years. So looks like we'll be talking about her for many, many more years to come on the tennis tour.
Chris, I'm surprised you didn't say the number one question I would have asked would have been, how do I stay injury free?
Oh, actually, who is your coach? That would have been the question I would have asked. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about job security?
I think the fact that she said she's going to be playing for 15 more years, hopefully it's a good sign that the surgery went well and she's feeling, confident in her ability to kind of come back onto the tour. So that's a positive.
She's keen.
Exactly. So we'll look forward to seeing what happens and who on earth will be coaching her, because I can't keep up. I think that's a really good quiz question on its own, like name all of her coaches. That would be a future par for the courts for sure. But moving on very quickly, in other news this week, we've had the United Cup draw released. So the United Cup will be taking place after Christmas, starts on December the 29th, out in Australia and Perth and Sydney. We've had the groups announced. We won't go through them all, but Great Britain in a very English-speaking group, because they've got USA and Australia in their group.
Tough group.
Which is a hard group. It does mean Katie Boulton might have to play her boyfriend, Alex de Minaur, in the mixed doubles, potentially. So that'd be quite interesting.
How excited are you genuinely for the United Cup? I wasn't even aware the draws got announced, and then this happened, and we've still got Billie Jean King Cup, Davis Cup finals to come. I just can't get behind this. Sorry.
We could have Rafa and Iga could be drawn against each other, but overall, I'd have to say the thing I'm excited about, and I think we can all rejoice in, it's not three cities with a very, very complicated formula to find out who goes through to the semi-finals, because that was some of the most complicated maths ever, with people flying all over for that. So at least with 2 cities, hopefully we'll get a little bit easier from the logistics side of things, because I mean, at that time of year, the last thing we want to do is, we've just put the calculators away, as you say, from those competitions. We don't want to get them back out again.
Yeah, it's very much West Coast, East Coast, and I mean, I don't know where the finals are going to be. I assume they'll have to pick one or the other, but we'll get that detailed closer to the time. But also, I still had to take umbrage at the kind of United Cup. I just feel like it's very corporate brand washing when we know the WTA and the ATP are not very united. Yeah. So why pretend that it
the
is?
Forced cup.
Exactly. But let's have a look at what's happening slightly nearer to now. We've got tournaments this week underway. We've got Vienna, we have got Basel, and we've got Zhuhai, as we mentioned. Let's start in Vienna. Now, Carlos Alcaraz was potentially going to play this event, but apparently his appearance fee was through the roof, and they said, no, we're not paying that. He was deemed too expensive. Is that right? That
is accurate. That's been reported.
How much?
Well, I mean, have a guess. What would you reckon for him to pick up a tennis racket?
A fiver.
Half a mil?
No.
Half a mil?
Half a million?
It's actually 750,000 euros is his starting fee. So
that is astronomical.
I mean,
the Tennis Weekly podcast can afford him, definitely.
Yeah, do you think he'll come on the podcast?
Yeah,
no
definitely.
rackets required. Maybe that would be but I tell you what, they aren't suffering for the lack of Carlos Alcaraz in Vienna. We have the likes of Medvedev, Fils in the first round, and Ben Shelton, Yannick Sinner. So
yes,
I mean,
that is going to be Sinner Shelton. I hope Shelton doesn't drop out from Tokyo. I mean, that's going to be quite a shift and quite a turnaround, but that's blockbuster first round, isn't it?
There's a lot of blockbusters. There's Tsitsipas versus home favourite Dominic Thiem, and I'm just a bit annoyed that I didn't get tickets for the start of the week, that I'm going at the end of the week, because it seems like we're getting what could be quarterfinals in round 1.
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd draw, but I mean, at least you'll be there for some of it. So we look forward to hearing your thoughts on the Erste Open.
I saw he won today. I saw he won today. Come on, he's back on the comeback trail.
I'm hoping maybe a Dan Evans we'll see, or something like that.
Ooh, okay.
Play yourself into form before the Davis Cup finals.
Yes, indeed. And also we've got Basel taking place. Holger Rune is the top seed. Casper Ruud, the second seed. Also got the likes of Hubert Hurkacz, Seb Calder, Taylor Fritz there. Will any of them have a better week than they did last week on tour? Well, that remains to be seen. But who are you looking at for this event in Basel? Obviously, it used to be Federer's fave
it's
tournament.
It's got to be Kim. Andy Murray, who had an absolute shocker of an Asian swing, I'd say. And
he won today.
He won today against Yannick Hanfmann, and it looks like, I mean, Echeverry and Corda have just gone into a third set. I sort of hope Echeverry comes through that, because it's going to be tough regardless. But yeah, it was nice to see Andy Murray get back into a semblance of form, because he didn't look himself out in Asia.
No. And just the last note, the Zhuhai Elite Trophy, we have 12 players playing that one. They've been split into 4 very lovely named groups. I love the floral names of the groups. Group Azalea, Group Orchid, Group Rose, and Group Camellia. How pretty is that? I'm a big fan of those
I've
group
never
names.
heard of... Is Camellia? That's a flower?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Isn't Camellia sinensis? Is that the tea plant?
I need to watch more garden as well.
Like
Clearly.
chamomile tea, do you mean? Like, if that would be the plant it comes from? I have no idea.
I don't know. I think it's just tea generally. I'm not sure. Maybe, yeah, chamomile. I don't know. Listeners, any horticulturalists among you, please let us know if we're right or wrong.
I mean, that Camellia group, Keys, Haddadmeyer, Garcia, that if there's a group of flowery death, I feel like it's that one.
We need predictions though for this. I feel like we have to.
Ooh, yeah.
The Elite Trophy.
Okay.
Who's going to take it home? I need a name from you both. Go on, Joel.
Chin Wen
Keys.
Chin Wen Zheng.
Ooh, really?
You heard it here
Or
first.
Ostapenko.
Oh goodness!
Are you going
I'm
Ostapenko,
surprised by
Kim?
this. I
I think Keys or Ostapenko.
Give us a name, Kim.
Keys, if I had to pick. She's more consistent.
I can't believe Joel didn't go for Lynette or Kudermetova and Kim didn't go for Samsonova.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to go
That's true, actually.
for Kujikova. Kujikova's taking it home.
Ooh, okay.
It is a tricky one. It's really very tricky. It's a lot of, I think, fairly even matchups there. So yeah, I think it'll be a good one. But we'll see what happens, and we'll be rounding it up this time next week, won't we?
And Chris will be back from Vienna, so we can hear a little bit from his travels. But listeners, we're going to end it there for this latest tour catch-up with the Tennis Weekly podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our latest episode. Remember to subscribe to us to stay up to date on all the action still to come from the ATP and WTA tours.
We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms out there. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
You can also follow us on social media, email the show. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and X, and the handle is Tennis Weekly Pod. You can purchase our exclusive Tennis Weekly merch at etsy.com/shop/Tennis Weekly Podcast. You can also email us tennisweeklypod@gmail.com or check out our website tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we will be back next week at Tennis Weekly HQ for our next tour catch-up. So I hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from Kim.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.